Sarah Martinez loved her small house on Maple Street. She had lived there for 3 years now. The house was not big or fancy, but it was perfect for her. It had a nice front yard with green grass and colorful flowers. In the back there was a small garden where she grew tomatoes and peppers. The best part of Sarah's home was her 2 dogs. Max and Luna were both German shepherds. Max was black and brown with smart eyes. Luna was lighter in color with white patches on her chest. Both dogs were big and strong, but they were gentle with Sarah. They loved to play in the yard and sleep by her feet at night. Sarah worked as a teacher at the local elementary school. She taught 3rd grade and loved working with children. Every morning she would get up early, feed Max and Luna, and then drive to school. The dogs would watch her leave from the front window. They knew she would come back in the afternoon. The neighborhood where Sarah lived was called Meadowbrook. It was a quiet place with nice families. Most of the houses looked similar. They were small to medium-sized with front yards and driveways. The streets were clean and safe. Children rode their bikes and played outside without worry. Meadowbrook had something called a homeowners association, or HOA for short. This was a group that made rules about how the neighborhood should look. The rules were not too strict. People had to keep their grass cut and their houses painted nicely. They could not leave broken cars in their driveways or put up ugly fences. Sarah knew all the HOA rules very well. She had read them carefully when she bought her house. The rules said grass should not be taller than 4 inches. House colors had to be approved before painting. Mailboxes had to be a certain style. Trash cans should not be visible from the street except on pickup days. Sarah always followed these rules. She cut her grass every week in the summer. Her house was painted a nice light blue color that was on the approved list. Her mailbox was the right style and color. She always put her trash cans away after pickup day. In 3 years, she had never gotten a single violation notice. The HOA was run by a management company downtown. Sarah had only talked to them twice, once when she bought the house and once when she asked about planting a tree in her front yard. The people at the office were always nice and helpful. They answered her questions quickly and politely. Most of Sarah's neighbors were friendly too. Mrs. Chen lived next door with her husband and 2 young children. They often waved to Sarah when she was working in her garden. Across the street lived Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. They were an older couple who liked to sit on their front porch in the evenings. At the end of the block lived the Williams family with their teenage son, who mowed lawns for extra money. Everything in Meadowbrook had been peaceful and quiet for years. People got along well. There were no big problems or arguments. Children played safely in the streets. Neighbors helped each other when needed. It was the kind of place where people felt happy and secure. But about 2 months ago, things started to change. Sarah first noticed it when she was talking to Mrs. Chen over their fence. Mrs. Chen seemed worried about something. "Have you seen that man in the uniform?" Mrs. Chen asked. "He came to my house yesterday with some papers." Sarah had not seen anyone in a uniform. She asked Mrs. Chen to tell her more about it. "He said he was from the HOA," Mrs. Chen explained. "He told me my garden flowers were the wrong color. He said I had to remove them or pay a fine. But I checked my copy of the rules. There is nothing about flower colors." This seemed very strange to Sarah. She had never heard of any rule about flower colors. The HOA rules she knew were mostly about keeping things neat and clean, not about specific colors. A few days later, Sarah was getting her mail when Mr. Johnson came over to talk to her. He looked upset and confused. "Sarah, you know the HOA rules pretty well, right?" he asked. "Someone came to my house today saying my mailbox was in the wrong place. He measured it and said it was 2 inches too far from the curb. He wrote me up for a violation." Sarah looked at Mr. Johnson's mailbox. It looked exactly like hers and everyone else's on the street. She had never heard of any rule about exact distances from the curb. "Did you get his name?" Sarah asked. "What company was he from?" Mr. Johnson showed her a piece of paper. The writing was messy and hard to read. It said something about HOA violations, but did not have a proper company name or logo on it. It looked like it was printed on a home computer. "This does not look right," Sarah told him. "You should call the HOA office and ask about it." That weekend, Sarah ran into Mrs. Williams at the grocery store. Mrs. Williams lived at the end of the block and always kept her house looking perfect. If anyone would know about HOA rules, it would be her. "Mrs. Williams, have you had anyone from the HOA come to your house lately?" Sarah asked. Mrs. Williams nodded with a frown. "Yes, just yesterday. A man in some kind of uniform. He said our house number was too small and we needed to get bigger numbers. He was very rude about it. He kept pointing at our house and writing things down on his clipboard. Did you call the HOA office to check? Sarah asked. I did, Mrs. Williams said. They told me they had not sent anyone to our neighborhood. They said there was no rule about house number sizes as long as they could be seen clearly. They seemed surprised when I told them about the man. Sarah was starting to feel worried. It sounded like someone was going around the neighborhood pretending to be from the HOA. This person was making up fake rules and scaring people. Sarah wondered what this person really wanted and why they were doing this. When Sarah got home from the store, she sat down at her kitchen table with Max and Luna beside her. She petted their soft fur while she thought about what was happening. Someone was targeting their peaceful neighborhood. Someone was trying to cause trouble for no good reason. Sarah decided she needed to be careful and watch out for this fake HOA person. She also decided to warn her other neighbors about what was going on. If someone was running a scam or trying to cause problems, the whole neighborhood needed to know about it. Little did Sarah know that very soon she would meet this mysterious person face to face. And when she did, it would start a chain of events that would change everything in her quiet neighborhood. Tuesday morning started like any other day for Sarah. She woke up at 6 o'clock when her alarm went off. Max and Luna were already awake, sitting by her bed with their tails wagging. They always knew when it was time to get up. Sarah got dressed and went to the kitchen to make coffee. She filled the dogs' water bowls and gave them their breakfast. Max ate his food quickly while Luna took her time, chewing each bite carefully. Sarah smiled watching them. These dogs had such different personalities, but they were both perfect. After breakfast, Sarah got ready for school. She packed her lunch and gathered her teaching materials. She gave Max and Luna each a pat on the head and told them to be good while she was gone. They walked her to the front door like they did every morning. Sarah was putting her bag in her car when she heard a loud voice behind her. "Excuse me. You there with the car?" Sarah turned around and saw a man walking toward her from the sidewalk. He was wearing what looked like a uniform. It was navy blue with patches on the sleeves. He had a clipboard in his hand and wore a serious expression on his face. The man looked to be in his 40s with brown hair and a thick mustache. He was not very tall, but he walked like he thought he was important. His uniform looked official, but something about it seemed off to Sarah. The patches were crooked and the shirt did not fit him well. "Are you the homeowner of this property?" the man asked in a loud voice. "Yes, I am," Sarah replied. "Can I help you?" The man flipped through papers on his clipboard. "I am Derek Hoffman, HOA compliance officer for this district. I am here to conduct an inspection of your property." Sarah had never heard of an HOA compliance officer. She had also never heard of anyone conducting inspections without notice. This must be the person her neighbors had been talking about. "I was not told about any inspection," Sarah said politely. "Can you show me some identification?" Derek ignored her question and started walking around her front yard. He pointed at her mailbox and made marks on his clipboard. "Your mailbox is positioned incorrectly," he announced. "It is 2 inches too far to the left of the approved placement zone." Sarah looked at her mailbox. It was in the exact same spot where it had been for 3 years. It looked identical to every other mailbox on the street. She had never heard of any approved placement zone. "I think there might be some mistake," Sarah said. "My mailbox has been in that spot since I moved here. No one has ever said there was a problem with it." Derek made more marks on his clipboard. Ignorance of the rules is not an excuse. The current regulations clearly state the requirements for mailbox positioning. He then walked over to Sarah's front garden, where she had a small garden gnome sitting among her flowers. The gnome was about 8 inches tall and painted bright colors. Sarah had bought it at a craft fair and thought it was cute. "This decorative item exceeds the height limit for lawn ornaments," Derek said, pointing at the gnome. "The maximum allowed height is 6 inches. This appears to be at least 8 inches. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. "There is no rule about garden gnome heights. I have read all the HOA rules very carefully." Derek stopped writing and looked up at Sarah with an annoyed expression. "Ma'am, I am the official compliance officer for this area. I think I know the rules better than you do. These violations need to be corrected within 72 hours or you will face additional penalties." He tore off a piece of paper from his clipboard and handed it to Sarah. The paper had her address at the top and a list of the violations he had just mentioned. At the bottom it said she owed $50 in fines. Sarah looked at the paper carefully. Like the one Mr. Johnson had shown her, this looked like it was printed on a home computer. There was no official letterhead or logo. The writing had spelling mistakes. It did not look professional at all. "I would like to see your identification," Sarah said again. "And I want the phone number for your supervisor." Derek's face turned red. "Listen, lady, I do not have time for this attitude. I have many more inspections to do today. You have been cited for legitimate violations. Pay the fine and fix the problems or face more serious consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Sarah asked. "Failure to comply with HOA regulations can result in immediate property inspections, increased fines, and legal action," Derek said. "You do not want to test the system." Sarah felt her anger rising, but she tried to stay calm. "I am going to call the HOA management office to verify your authority." "What company do you work for?" Derek waved his hand dismissively. "The management office does not handle compliance issues. That is what I am here for. I suggest you focus on fixing these violations instead of making phone calls." He started to walk away, but Sarah called after him. "Wait, I still want to see your identification." Derek turned back with an angry look. "My authority comes from the HOA board directly. I do not need to show you anything. You have 72 hours to comply, or I will be back for a full property inspection." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked. "It means I will need to inspect the inside of your house to check for other violations," Derek said with a smirk. "Interior paint colors, furniture placement, cleanliness standards. The HOA has the right to ensure all properties meet community standards." Sarah knew this was completely wrong. No HOA had the right to inspect inside people's homes without permission. This man was clearly making things up as he went along. "You do not have the right to enter my house," Sarah said firmly. Derek stepped closer to her, trying to look intimidating. "Ma'am, you clearly do not understand your obligations as a homeowner in this community. I strongly suggest you educate yourself before you end up in serious trouble." He walked away toward the street but then turned back one more time. "I will be monitoring this property closely," he called out. "Any additional violations will result in immediate action." Sarah watched him walk down the street toward other houses. She felt angry and frustrated. This man was obviously running some kind of scam, but he seemed very confident about it. She wondered how many of her neighbors he had already fooled with his fake authority. Sarah looked down at the violation notice in her hand. The more she studied it, the more fake it looked. The paper was cheap. The printing was blurry. There were no official seals or signatures. It looked like something a child might make for a school project. She got in her car and drove to school, but she could not stop thinking about Derek Hoffman. Something about him made her feel uneasy. It was not just that he was running a scam. There was something more threatening about his behavior. The way he looked at her house, the way he talked about inspecting the inside. It felt like he was planning something bigger than just collecting fake fines. During her lunch break at school, Sarah called the HOA management office from her classroom. She spoke to Mrs. Thompson, the office manager she had talked to before. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Sarah Martinez from Meadowbrook. Someone came to my house this morning claiming to be an HOA compliance officer. He gave me violation notices for things that are not actually violations." "Oh dear," Mrs. Thompson said. "We have been getting several calls about this person. I can tell you right now that we do not have any compliance officers. We do not conduct surprise inspections, and we certainly do not charge $50 fines for mailbox positions." "So this person has no authority at all?" Sarah asked. "None whatsoever," Mrs. Thompson confirmed. "We have already reported this to the police. If he comes back to your property, you should call them immediately. Do not let him intimidate you or collect any money from you." Sarah felt relieved to have her suspicions confirmed, but she also felt more worried. If Derek Hoffman was willing to impersonate an official and threaten people, what else might he be planning? And why was he targeting her neighborhood specifically? When Sarah got home from school that afternoon, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. There was a small mark on her front door frame, like someone had scratched it with a key or coin. She was sure it had not been there that morning. Derek Hoffman had been back while she was at work. Sarah stared at the small scratch on her door frame for a long time. Her hands were shaking as she unlocked her front door. Max and Luna greeted her with their usual excitement, but Sarah barely noticed them. All she could think about was Derek Hoffman and what this mark might mean. Inside her house, Sarah sat down at her kitchen table with her laptop. She needed to learn everything she could about this fake HOA officer. If he was dangerous, she wanted to be prepared. First, Sarah searched online for Derek Hoffman HOA. She found nothing. Then she tried HOA compliance officer and HOA inspection. What she learned made her feel both better and worse at the same time. Sarah discovered that real HOA management companies never send surprise inspectors to homes. They always notify homeowners in writing before any official visits. They also never demand immediate cash payments for violations. All real HOA violations go through a formal process with multiple notices and chances to appeal. This confirmed that Derek was running a complete scam. But it also meant he was probably not working alone. Sarah found several news articles about fake HOA scams happening in other cities. Usually, these scams involved teams of people who targeted entire neighborhoods. They would collect fake fines from scared homeowners, then disappear before anyone figured out what was happening. But some of the articles mentioned more serious crimes. In one city, fake HOA officers had used their access to homes to case them for burglaries. In another case, a scammer had used fake inspections to identify elderly or vulnerable residents who could be targeted for bigger scams. Sarah printed out several of these articles and highlighted the important parts. She wanted to share this information with her neighbors and the police. Next, Sarah called Mrs. Thompson at the HOA office again. She wanted to know exactly how many neighbors had reported visits from Derek. So far, we have received calls from 7 homeowners in your neighborhood, Mrs. Thompson told her. All of them described the same man and the same type of fake violations. We have given all of their information to the police. Has anyone actually paid him money? Sarah asked. Unfortunately, yes. 2 families paid $50 each before they realized it was a scam. The police are treating this as theft by deception now. Sarah felt sick thinking about her neighbors being robbed by this man. She thought about Mrs. Chen and Mr. Johnson, who were both older and might be more likely to trust someone in an official-looking uniform. What should we do if he comes back? Sarah asked. Do not engage with him at all, Mrs. Thompson advised. Do not let him on your property. Call the police immediately, and whatever you do, do not let him into your house. After hanging up, Sarah called the police herself. She spoke to Officer Martinez, who was handling the case. He told her that they were actively looking for Derek Hoffman but had not found him yet. We believe he is driving a white pickup truck with fake magnetic signs on the sides, Officer Martinez explained. The signs say HOA compliance services, but the phone number on them is disconnected. He threatened to inspect the inside of my house, Sarah told him. Is that something I should be worried about? Yes, definitely, Officer Martinez said seriously. These fake inspection scams sometimes escalate to breaking and entering. The scammers use their fake authority to identify good targets for burglary. Has he been back to your property since this morning? Sarah told him about the scratch on her door frame. Officer Martinez said he would send someone to look at it and take a report. In the meantime, make sure all your doors and windows are locked, he advised. If you have a security system, now would be a good time to activate it. And if you see him on your property again, call us immediately. After talking to the police, Sarah decided to warn her neighbors personally. She started with Mrs. Chen next door. Mrs. Chen invited Sarah in for tea and listened carefully as Sarah explained what she had learned. Mrs. Chen looked worried when Sarah showed her the news articles about fake HOA scams. I almost paid him, Mrs. Chen admitted. He was very convincing and seemed to know a lot about HOA rules. But something felt wrong, so I decided to wait and ask my husband first. Did he ask to come inside your house? Sarah asked. Yes. He said he needed to check our paint colors to make sure they matched the approved list. I told him no because my husband was not home. He seemed angry about that. Sarah felt a chill. Derek was definitely trying to get inside people's houses. She wondered what he was really looking for. Sarah visited 4 more neighbors that evening. All of them had similar stories. Derek had approached them with fake violations and had asked to inspect inside their homes. Most had refused, but Mr. Peterson at the end of the block said Derek had been very aggressive about it. He told me that refusing an inspection was itself a violation, Mr. Peterson explained. He said the HOA could put a lien on my house if I did not cooperate. I was about to let him in when my wife came home and told him to leave. Sarah was gathering a clear picture of Derek's methods. He was using fear and fake authority to try to gain access to homes. The question was why? Was he planning burglaries? Was he looking for something specific? Or was this just part of a larger scam? That night, Sarah could not sleep well. Every small sound made her think Derek might be outside her house. Max and Luna seemed to sense her anxiety. They stayed close to her bed instead of sleeping in their usual spots by the front door. Around midnight, Sarah heard a car driving slowly down her street. She got up and looked out her bedroom window carefully. A white pickup truck was moving very slowly past her house. The driver appeared to be looking at all the houses as he passed. Sarah's heart started beating fast. She grabbed her phone and called the police non-emergency number. She described the truck and gave them her address. The dispatcher said they would send a patrol car to check the area. By the time the police arrived, the white truck was gone. Officer Kim came to Sarah's door to take a statement. She told him about the slow-moving truck and her concerns about Derek. "We have had several reports of a white pickup truck in this neighborhood over the past few weeks," Officer Kim told her. "We think your fake HOA officer is using it to case houses and plan his next moves." "What should I do?" Sarah asked. "Keep your doors locked and your security system on. If you see him or the truck again, call us right away. And consider staying somewhere else for a few nights if you have family or friends nearby." Sarah thanked Officer Kim, but decided she was not going to be driven out of her own home by some scammer. She had Max and Luna to protect her, and she was not going to let Derek Hoffman intimidate her. The next morning, Sarah installed additional security measures. She bought motion sensor lights for her front and backyards. She also purchased a doorbell camera so she could see who was at her door without opening it. While she was installing the doorbell camera, her neighbor, Mr. Johnson, came over to help. "I heard about what happened last night," he said. "My wife and I are worried about you living alone with just the dogs." "I appreciate that," Sarah said, "but I am not going to let this guy scare me away from my own home." Mr. Johnson nodded approvingly. "That is the right attitude. But promise me you will be extra careful. This Derek fellow seems like he might be planning something bigger than just collecting fake fines." Sarah agreed to be careful, but she also made another decision. She was not going to just wait around for Derek to make his next move. She was going to be ready for him. That afternoon, Sarah took Max and Luna to the park for extra training. She worked with them on alert commands and defensive positions. Both dogs were naturally protective, but Sarah wanted to make sure they would respond properly if someone tried to break into her house. Max and Luna seemed to understand that something was different. They paid extra attention to Sarah's commands and practiced their protective stances over and over. Sarah could tell they sensed the tension and were ready to defend their home if needed. As Sarah walked her dogs home from the park, she noticed the same white pickup truck parked at the end of her street. Derek Hoffman was sitting inside watching her house through binoculars. Sarah's blood ran cold. This was no longer just about fake HOA violations. Derek was stalking her. Sarah stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching Derek Hoffman sit in his white pickup truck. He had binoculars pointed directly at her house. When he noticed her looking at him, he did not try to hide or drive away. Instead, he lowered the binoculars and stared right back at her. Max and Luna sensed something was wrong. Both dogs stood alert beside Sarah, their ears pointed forward and their bodies tense. They could feel her fear and anxiety. Sarah decided not to let Derek see how scared she was. She walked calmly toward her house with the dogs, but she kept watching the truck out of the corner of her eye. Derek started his engine and drove slowly past her as she reached her front door. As he passed, he rolled down his window. "Nice dogs," he called out with a nasty smile. "I hope they are properly registered with the HOA Pet Committee." Sarah knew there was no such thing as an HOA Pet Committee, but Derek's comment made her stomach turn. He was now threatening her dogs too. She quickly went inside and locked the door behind her. Sarah immediately called Officer Martinez to report that Derek was watching her house. He said they would increase patrols in her neighborhood and advised her to keep a log of every time she saw Derek or his truck. Over the next few days, Derek's behavior became much worse. He started showing up at Sarah's house multiple times each day. Sometimes he would park across the street and just sit there watching. Other times he would walk around her property taking pictures with his phone. On Wednesday morning, Sarah found another fake violation notice stuck to her front door. This one claimed her grass was half an inch too tall and that her house number was not properly illuminated at night. The fine had increased to $75 and there was a new thread at the bottom. Final notice, the paper said. Failure to comply within 24 hours will result in immediate interior property inspection and additional penalties up to $500. Sarah took pictures of the notice and sent them to Officer Martinez. She also called Mrs. Thompson at the HOA office to report the new fake violations. "This is getting out of hand," Mrs. Thompson said. "We have now received complaints about this man from 12 different homeowners in your neighborhood. The police need to find him before this escalates further." That afternoon, Sarah was working in her garden when Derek appeared at her fence. He did not announce himself or ask permission to be on her property. He just started taking pictures of her house from different angles. "Excuse me," Sarah said firmly. "You are on private property. Please leave." Derek ignored her and continued taking pictures. He walked around to her backyard and started photographing her back door and windows. Sarah felt her anger boiling over. "I said leave. You have no authority here and no right to be on my property." Derek finally looked at her with a cold expression. "Ma'am, I am conducting an official inspection. Your compliance with this process is mandatory." "You are not official anything," Sarah shot back. "You are a scammer and a trespasser. Leave now or I am calling the police." Derek's face turned red with anger. "You are making a very big mistake, lady. The HOA does not tolerate uncooperative residents. There will be serious consequences for your attitude." He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of Sarah herself. "I am documenting your refusal to cooperate with official procedures. This will be included in my report to the Enforcement Division." Sarah had heard enough. She pulled out her own phone and started recording Derek. "And I am documenting your trespassing and harassment. Smile for the camera." Derek looked surprised and angry when he realized he was being recorded. He quickly put his phone away and started walking toward the street. "This is not over," he called back to Sarah. "You have no idea what kind of trouble you are bringing on yourself." Sarah kept recording until Derek got in his truck and drove away. Then she immediately sent the video to Officer Martinez and posted it on the neighborhood social media group to warn other residents. The response from her neighbors was immediate and supportive. Several people shared their own stories about Derek's visits. Others offered to help watch Sarah's house when she was at work. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson said they would keep their porch light on all night so Sarah's house would not be as isolated. But Derek's behavior only got worse. On Thursday, Sarah came home from school to find that someone had tried to open her back gate. The latch was bent and there were tool marks on the metal. Her motion sensor lights in the backyard had been turned to face the ground instead of covering the yard. Sarah called the police immediately. Officer Kim came to take a report and examine the damage to her gate. "This looks like someone was testing your security," he said. "They wanted to see how easy it would be to get into your backyard without being seen." "What should I do?" Sarah asked. "Install more cameras if you can," Officer Kim advised, "and consider getting a security system for your house if you do not already have one. This guy seems to be planning something more than just harassment." That evening, Sarah went to the hardware store and bought additional security equipment. She installed cameras covering her front door, back door, and both sides of her house. She also bought motion sensors for all her windows and doors. Max and Luna watched Sarah work on the security system with interest. They seemed to understand that their home was being threatened and they needed to be extra alert. On Friday morning, Sarah woke up to find fresh footprints in the mud around her house. Someone had walked all the way around her property during the night, checking every window and door. The footprints matched the work boots Derek had been wearing. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. Derek was clearly planning to break into her house, but when? And why was he targeting her specifically when there were other houses in the neighborhood that might be easier targets? Sarah called in sick to work that day. She did not want to leave her house unprotected when Derek was obviously planning something. She spent the day reinforcing her security and making sure all her doors and windows were properly locked. Around lunchtime, Derek's white pickup truck appeared at the end of the street again. This time, he parked there for over an hour, just watching Sarah's house. Sarah took pictures and videos through her window and sent them to the police. When Derek finally drove away, he went very slowly past Sarah's house. Sarah could see him looking directly at her security cameras. Instead of being deterred by them, he seemed to be studying them to figure out their blind spots. That afternoon, Sarah received a phone call that made her blood run cold. The caller ID showed Derek's name, though Sarah had no idea how he had gotten her phone number. "Sarah Martinez," Derek said when she answered. "You have caused me a lot of trouble this week." "How did you get my number?" Sarah demanded. "I have access to all homeowner information through the HOA database." Derek lied smoothly. "I am calling to give you one final chance to comply with the violation notices." "I am not paying you anything," Sarah said firmly. and I want you to stop harassing me and my neighbors." Derek laughed in a way that made Sarah's skin crawl. "You really do not understand your situation, do you? I have the authority to enter your property and inspect your home whenever I deem it necessary. If you continue to refuse cooperation, I will be forced to take more direct action." "You do not have any authority," Sarah said, "and if you come on my property again, I will have you arrested." "We will see about that," Derek said. "Enjoy your weekend, Sarah. I will be seeing you very soon." The line went dead. Sarah's hands were shaking as she put down the phone. Derek's tone had been threatening and confident. He was definitely planning something, and it was going to happen soon. Sarah immediately called Officer Martinez and told him about the phone call. He said they would try to trace the number and increase police presence in her neighborhood over the weekend. "Do you have somewhere else you can stay tonight?" Officer Martinez asked. "A friend or family member's house?" Sarah looked at Max and Luna, who were sitting beside her with worried expressions. She thought about her comfortable house and her safe neighborhood that Derek was trying to destroy. "No," Sarah said firmly. "This is my home. I am not going to be driven out by some criminal pretending to be an HOA officer." "Then please be extra careful," Officer Martinez said. "Keep your security system armed and your phone close by. If you see or hear anything suspicious, call us immediately." That night, Sarah barely slept. Every sound made her think Derek might be outside trying to break in. Max and Luna seemed to sense the danger too. They positioned themselves by the front and back doors, taking turns keeping watch. Around 3 in the morning, Sarah's motion sensor lights in the backyard suddenly turned on. She could hear someone moving around outside her house. Sarah grabbed her phone and called 911 while watching her security camera feeds. On the screen, she could see a dark figure walking around her backyard with a flashlight. The person was checking all her windows and doors, looking for the best way to break in. Sarah was sure it was Derek, but the figure was wearing dark clothes and a hood that hid his face. The police arrived within minutes, but by then the intruder was gone. They found fresh footprints and evidence that someone had tried to pry open Sarah's back door. Officer Kim told Sarah that it looked like someone was planning a break-in for the very near future. "This person knows your house now," he said. Friday evening arrived with dark clouds and the promise of rain. Sarah had spent the entire day preparing for what she felt sure was coming. Derek Hoffman had been escalating his harassment all week, and his threatening phone call the day before convinced her that he was planning to break into her house soon. Sarah made sure all her security cameras were working properly. She tested her motion sensor lights and checked that her door and window alarms were armed. She also prepared Max and Luna for what might happen. Both dogs seemed to sense the tension in the air and stayed close to Sarah all day. Around 6 o'clock, Sarah's friend Jessica called to invite her to their monthly book club meeting. "Come on, Sarah," Jessica said. "You have been stressed all week about this HOA creep. A night out with friends is exactly what you need." Sarah looked at Max and Luna, who were lying by her feet in the living room. She had been thinking about skipping book club to stay home and guard her house, but then she realized that might actually be a good idea for a different reason. If Derek was watching her house and planning a break-in, he would probably wait until he thought no one was home. Sarah decided to make it look like she was going out for the evening, but she would actually come back early and catch Derek in the act. "You know what, Jessica? That sounds perfect," Sarah said. "I will see you at 7. Sarah got dressed like she was going out for the evening. She made sure to turn on several lights in her house so it would not look completely empty. Then she put Max and Luna in the backyard through their doggy door. From outside, it would look like the house was empty except for the dogs being outside. What Derek did not know was that Max and Luna could come back inside through their doggy door whenever they wanted. Sarah had trained them to use it freely, and they often went in and out during the day as they pleased. Sarah drove to Jessica's house and attended the first hour of book club. She participated in the discussion and acted normal, but her mind was really on her house and what might be happening there. At 8:30, she made an excuse about feeling sick and said she needed to go home early. "Are you sure you are okay?" Jessica asked with concern. "You do look a little pale." "I just have a headache," Sarah lied. "I think I need to get some rest." Sarah drove home slowly, taking a different route than usual. She wanted to approach her neighborhood carefully in case Derek was watching for her return. As she turned onto her street, she could see her house in the distance. The lights she had left on were still glowing in the windows, but something was wrong. Sarah could see a white pickup truck parked 2 blocks away from her house. Even from a distance, she recognized Derek's truck. He was sitting inside, watching her house and waiting for something. Sarah parked her car around the corner where Derek could not see it. She pulled out her phone and called 911. "This is Sarah Martinez on Maple Street," she whispered to the dispatcher. "The man who has been harassing me is parked outside my house right now. I think he is planning to break in. We are sending units to your location now," the dispatcher said. "Do not approach your house until the police arrive." But as Sarah sat in her car waiting, she saw Derek get out of his truck. He was wearing dark clothes and carrying a small bag. He looked around carefully, then started walking toward Sarah's house. Sarah's heart started pounding. Derek was actually going to do it. He was going to break into her house right now. She watched in horror as he walked around to her backyard, where he would be hidden from the street. Sarah knew the police were coming, but she also knew it might take them several minutes to arrive. She could not just sit in her car and watch Derek break into her home. She had to do something. Sarah got out of her car and crept carefully toward her house. She stayed in the shadows and moved slowly so Derek would not hear her coming. As she got closer, she could hear sounds coming from her backyard. Sarah peered around the corner of her house and saw Derek working on her back door with some kind of tool. It looked like a crowbar or pry bar. He was trying to force the door open without making too much noise. For a moment, Sarah thought about confronting Derek herself. But then she remembered that he might be dangerous and she was alone. Instead, she decided to call out to scare him away. "Hey," Sarah shouted from the side of her house. "What are you doing?" Derek froze for a second, then started working on the door even faster. He knew he had been caught, but he was determined to get inside the house anyway. Sarah heard a loud crack as the door frame started to give way. Derek was actually breaking into her house right in front of her. She pulled out her phone to call 911 again, but then she heard another sound that made her smile. From inside the house came the sound of dogs barking. Max and Luna had heard the noise at the back door and were rushing to investigate. Derek must have thought the dogs were outside in the backyard, but they had actually come inside through their doggy door hours ago. Sarah heard Derek curse loudly as he realized the dogs were inside the house. But it was too late for him to change his plan. The back door finally gave way with a loud crack, and Derek stumbled into Sarah's kitchen. What happened next was exactly what Sarah had hoped for, but even better than she had imagined. The moment Derek stepped through the broken door, Max and Luna were there waiting for him. Both dogs immediately went into protective mode. They did not attack Derek, but they positioned themselves between him and the rest of the house, barking loudly and showing their teeth. Derek dropped his crowbar and backed against the kitchen counter. Sarah could hear him yelling at the dogs to get away, but Max and Luna held their ground. They had been trained to protect their home, and that was exactly what they were doing. Sarah crept around to the front of her house and used her key to enter through the front door. She wanted to see what was happening in the kitchen, but she also wanted to be ready to help her dogs if Derek tried to hurt them. When Sarah looked into the kitchen, she saw Derek cowering behind her kitchen island while Max and Luna kept him trapped there. The dogs were not attacking him, but they were making it very clear that he was not welcome and he was not going anywhere. Derek was shouting at the dogs and waving his arms, trying to scare them away. But Max and Luna just barked louder and held their positions. They had Derek completely cornered. In his panic, Derek started grabbing things from Sarah's counter and throwing them at the dogs. He knocked over a lamp, broke some dishes, and scattered papers everywhere. But the dogs just dodged the flying objects and continued barking. Then Derek made a mistake that would seal his fate. In his panic and frustration, he pulled out his cell phone and called 911 himself. "I need help," Derek shouted into the phone. "I am being attacked by vicious dogs. I am conducting an official HOA inspection and these animals are threatening me." Sarah almost laughed out loud. Derek was so panicked that he was calling the police on himself. He had just confessed to breaking into her house while claiming he had official authority to do it. Sarah could hear sirens getting closer. The police units she had called were almost there, and now Derek had called them too. There was no way he was going to escape this situation. Derek seemed to realize he had made a terrible mistake. He looked around the kitchen frantically, trying to find another way out. But Max and Luna were blocking the back door and Sarah was blocking the path to the front of the house. "Call off your dogs," Derek yelled when he saw Sarah. "I have the legal right to inspect this property." "No, you do not," Sarah said calmly. And those are not my dogs attacking you. Those are my dogs protecting their home from a burglar. Derek's face went white as he realized how much trouble he was in. He had broken into Sarah's house, damaged her property, and called the police on himself. There was no way to talk his way out of this situation. The sirens were getting very loud now. Sarah could see flashing lights through her front windows. The police had arrived, and Derek Hoffman's crime spree was finally over. Max and Luna continued to hold Derek in place, barking and growling every time he tried to move. They were the perfect guard dogs, protecting their home without actually hurting the intruder. Sarah felt a wave of pride and relief wash over her. Her dogs had done exactly what she had hoped they would do. They had protected their home and caught a criminal in the act. Derek's plan had backfired completely, and now he was going to face the consequences of his actions. The moment Derek Hoffman stepped through the broken back door into Sarah's kitchen, he knew he had made a terrible mistake. The house was supposed to be empty except for 2 dogs that should have been outside in the backyard. Instead, he found himself face to face with 80 pounds of angry German Shepherd. Max was the first to respond to the break-in. He had been sleeping in the living room when he heard the sounds of Derek working on the back door. Max's ears perked up immediately, and he quietly moved toward the kitchen to investigate. When he heard the door frame cracking, Max let out a low growl that woke up Luna. Luna had been napping by Sarah's bedroom door. She was a lighter sleeper than Max and always more alert to strange sounds. When she heard Max's warning growl, she immediately got up and padded silently toward the kitchen. Both dogs arrived at the kitchen entrance just as Derek forced the door open and stumbled inside. For a split second, there was complete silence as Derek and the dogs stared at each other in surprise. Derek had expected to find an empty house that he could search quietly. He had been watching Sarah's property for days and thought he understood her routine. He had seen the dogs go outside through their doggy door and assumed they would stay in the backyard all evening. What Derek did not realize was that Max and Luna had the freedom to come and go as they pleased. They had used the doggy door to come back inside hours ago when it started getting dark and cool outside. They had been comfortable and relaxed in their own home until Derek's break-in woke them up. The first thing Derek noticed was how big the dogs were. In his surveillance of Sarah's property, he had only seen Max and Luna from a distance. Up close, they looked much larger and more intimidating. Both dogs stood nearly 3 feet tall at the shoulder, with thick fur, pointed ears, and intelligent eyes that were now focused entirely on him. Max moved first. He stepped directly in front of Derek and let out a deep, threatening bark. The sound echoed through the kitchen and seemed to shake the walls. Max's hackles were raised, making him look even bigger than he already was. His teeth were visible and his eyes never left Derek's face. Luna positioned herself to Max's left, blocking Derek's path to the rest of the house. She was slightly smaller than Max, but just as intimidating. Luna's bark was higher pitched but no less threatening. Both dogs worked together like a team, surrounding Derek and cutting off his escape routes. Derek's first instinct was to try to scare the dogs away. He waved his arms and shouted at them to back off. But Max and Luna had been trained to protect their home, and they were not intimidated by Derek's aggressive gestures. If anything, his threatening behavior made them more determined to keep him contained. "Get away from me," Derek yelled, backing up against the kitchen counter. "I have the right to be here." The dogs did not understand Derek's words, but they understood his tone and body language perfectly. He was an intruder who had broken into their home, and he was acting aggressively toward them. This made Max and Luna even more alert and protective. Derek tried to move toward the hallway that led to the front of the house, but Luna immediately stepped into his path. She lowered her head and showed her teeth, making it clear that he was not going anywhere. When Derek tried to move the other way, Max blocked him with a loud bark and a forward lunge that stopped just short of actual contact. The dogs were using a technique called controlled aggression. They were being threatening enough to keep Derek in place, but they were not actually attacking him. This was exactly how they had been trained to respond to intruders. They were protecting their territory without unnecessarily harming anyone. Derek was not used to dealing with well-trained guard dogs. Most of his previous scams had involved targeting elderly people or families with small pets. He had never encountered dogs that were both large enough and smart enough to trap him effectively. As his panic grew, Derek started grabbing things from Sarah's kitchen counter and throwing them at the dogs. He picked up a coffee mug and hurled it at Max, but the big dog easily dodged it. The mug smashed against the wall, sending pieces of ceramic flying across the floor. Next, Derek grabbed a small lamp from the counter and threw it toward Luna. She stepped aside gracefully, and the lamp crashed into the refrigerator, breaking into several pieces. The dogs seemed completely unimpressed by Derek's attempts to scare them with flying objects. Max and Luna had dealt with much more challenging situations during their training. Sarah had worked with a professional dog trainer to teach them how to handle different types of threats. They knew the difference between playful roughhousing and real danger, and they knew how to respond appropriately to each situation. Derek's behavior was clearly that of a dangerous intruder, so the dogs maintained their defensive positions without backing down. They continued barking loudly to alert anyone nearby that there was trouble, but they did not escalate to physical violence unless Derek actually tried to hurt them. In his desperation, Derek tried a different approach. He started speaking to the dogs in what he thought was a calming voice. "Nice doggies," he said, trying to sound friendly. "I am just here to do an inspection. There is no need to get upset." But Max and Luna were too smart to fall for Derek's fake friendliness. Dogs are excellent at reading human emotions and intentions, and they could sense Derek's fear, anger, and dishonesty. His words did not match his body language or his emotional state, so the dogs continued to treat him as a threat. Derek then made another crucial mistake. In his panic, he pulled out his cell phone and called 911. He was so focused on getting help that he did not think about how this would look to the police. "I need help," Derek shouted into the phone. "I am being attacked by vicious dogs. I am conducting an official HOA inspection, and these animals are threatening me." Max and Luna could hear the fear and hysteria in Derek's voice, which only confirmed to them that he was dangerous. They maintained their positions and continued barking, making sure Derek could not move from his spot behind the kitchen island. The dog's barking was also serving another important purpose. The loud noise was alerting the entire neighborhood that something was wrong at Sarah's house. Several neighbors later said they heard the barking and looked out their windows to see police cars arriving. As Derek cowered behind the kitchen island, he started to realize just how thoroughly his plan had failed. He had broken into what he thought was an empty house, only to find himself trapped by two highly trained guard dogs. He had damaged Sarah's property in his panic, and he had called the police on himself while confessing to the break-in. Max and Luna, meanwhile, were performing their job perfectly. They had detected an intruder, contained him without unnecessary violence, and alerted everyone in the area that there was a problem. They were protecting their home and their human exactly as they had been trained to do. Derek tried one more time to escape by rushing toward the broken back door. But Max immediately moved to block his path, letting out such a fierce bark that Derek stumbled backward and knocked over a chair. Luna circled around to cut off any other escape route, working in perfect coordination with Max. The dogs had Derek completely trapped, and they were prepared to keep him there for as long as necessary. They could hear sirens getting closer, which meant help was coming for their human. Max and Luna knew they just had to maintain their positions until the authorities arrived. Derek slumped against the kitchen counter, finally realizing that he was not going anywhere. The dogs had outmaneuvered him completely. His fake HOA scam was over, and he was about to face the consequences of escalating from fraud to breaking and entering. As the sirens got louder, Max and Luna remained alert and focused. They had successfully defended their home against an intruder, and they were ready to hand him over to the police. Their loyalty to Sarah and their training had paid off perfectly. Derek Hoffman had thought he was breaking into an easy target. Instead, he had walked into the most effective security system possible. Two intelligent, well-trained dogs who loved their home and would do anything to protect it. The sound of sirens filled the quiet neighborhood as 3 police cars raced down Maple Street. Officer Martinez was in the first car, having recognized Sarah's address when the call came in. He had been expecting something like this to happen, given Derek Hoffman's escalating behavior over the past week. Officer Kim followed in the second car, while Officer Rodriguez brought up the rear. All 3 officers had been briefed about the fake HOA situation and knew that Derek was potentially dangerous. They were prepared for anything as they pulled up to Sarah's house. The officers could hear loud barking coming from inside the house as they got out of their cars. The sound was clearly coming from large dogs, and it was the kind of barking that meant business. Officer Martinez had heard similar sounds before when dogs were holding intruders at bay. Sounds like the dogs have someone cornered, Officer Kim said as they approached the front door. Let's hope it's our fake HOA guy, Officer Martinez replied. The officers were surprised when Sarah appeared at her front door, safe and unharmed. She had been watching for them through her window and came out to meet them immediately. Thank goodness you are here, Sarah said. Derek Hoffman broke into my house through the back door. My dogs have him trapped in the kitchen. Are you injured? Officer Rodriguez asked, checking Sarah for any signs of harm. No, I am fine, Sarah replied. I was not even here when he broke in. I came home early from book club and saw him working on my back door. Max and Luna caught him when he got inside. Officer Martinez nodded approvingly. Smart thinking, staying outside until we arrived. Where exactly is the suspect now? In my kitchen, behind the island, Sarah said. The dogs are keeping him there. They will not let him move. The officers could still hear Derek shouting from inside the house, mixed with the dogs' continued barking. His voice sounded panicked and desperate. Let me call him off the dogs, Derek was yelling. I am being attacked by vicious animals. I have the right to inspect this property. Officer Kim shook his head. Even now he is sticking to his fake HOA story. This guy really does not know when to quit. The officers followed Sarah into her house, moving carefully toward the kitchen. They wanted to assess the situation before taking any action. As they got closer, they could see the scene clearly. Derek Hoffman was crouched behind Sarah's kitchen island, looking terrified and disheveled. His dark clothes were torn and he had scratches on his hands from the broken dishes he had knocked over. Around him, the kitchen was a mess of broken lamp pieces, scattered papers, and overturned chairs. Max and Luna were positioned on either side of the kitchen island, watching Derek intently. Both dogs were alert and ready, but they were not showing any signs of aggression toward the arriving officers. They seemed to understand that the police were there to help. Mr. Hoffman, Officer Martinez called out in a calm but authoritative voice. This is the police. I need you to stay exactly where you are and keep your hands visible. Derek's head popped up from behind the island. His face was red and sweaty and his hair was messed up from his panic. When he saw the officers, he immediately started talking fast. Officers, thank God you are here, Derek said. These vicious dogs attacked me while I was conducting a routine HOA inspection. I demand that you remove these dangerous animals immediately. Officer Kim looked around the kitchen, taking in the broken back door, the scattered debris, and Derek's obvious state of panic. Sir, we received a 911 call about a break-in at this address, Officer Kim said. Can you explain why you are inside this house? I already told you, Derek insisted. I am an HOA compliance officer. I have the legal authority to inspect this property for violations. I was attacked by these dogs while performing my official duties. Officer Rodriguez pulled out his notepad. Can you show us some identification and documentation of this authority? Derek hesitated. My identification is in my truck, and my authority comes directly from the HOA board. I do not need to carry written authorization for routine inspections. Sarah stepped forward. Officers, I can prove he is lying. I have been in contact with the real HOA office all week about this man. They confirmed he has no authority whatsoever. Officer Martinez nodded. We are aware of the situation, Ms. Martinez. We have been looking for Mr. Hoffman for several days now. This is ridiculous, Derek protested. I am the victim here. These dogs are dangerous and should be destroyed. Max and Luna remained perfectly calm during this exchange. They were still watching Derek carefully, but they showed no aggression toward the officers or Sarah. Their behavior clearly demonstrated that they were well-trained and under control. Sir, I need you to come out from behind that counter slowly, Officer Kim instructed. Keep your hands where we can see them. Derek looked nervously at Max and Luna. What about the dogs? They will attack me if I move. The dogs appear to be very well behaved, Officer Rodriguez observed. They have not shown any aggression toward us. I think they will be fine as long as you move slowly and do not act threatening. Sarah whistled softly to get Max and Luna's attention. Max, Luna back, she said in a calm voice. Both dogs immediately responded to Sarah's command. They stepped back several feet, giving Derek room to move, but they kept their eyes on him. Their training was evident in how quickly and precisely they obeyed Sarah's instructions. Derek slowly stood up from behind the kitchen island. As he did, the full extent of the mess he had created became visible. In addition to the broken lamp and dishes, he had knocked over a plant, scattered mail everywhere, and left muddy footprints all over Sarah's clean floor. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," Officer Martinez instructed. Derek complied reluctantly, and Officer Martinez handcuffed him without incident. As soon as Derek was restrained, Max and Luna visibly relaxed. They had done their job, and now the proper authorities were handling the situation. "Derek Hoffman, you are under arrest for breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and criminal impersonation," Officer Martinez announced. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As Officer Martinez read Derek his rights, Officer Kim began documenting the crime scene. He took pictures of the broken back door, the damaged property, and the mess Derek had created in his panic. Officer Rodriguez interviewed Sarah about what she had witnessed. Sarah provided a detailed account of Derek's week-long harassment campaign and described exactly what she had seen when she arrived home that evening. "He had been casing my house for days," Sarah explained. "He knew my routine and thought the house would be empty. He did not know that Max and Luna could come back inside through their doggy door." "Smart dogs," Officer Rodriguez commented, looking at Max and Luna with admiration. "They handled this situation perfectly. They contained the intruder without causing unnecessary harm." Derek continued to protest his innocence as the officers prepared to take him to jail. "This is all a misunderstanding," he insisted. "I am an official HOA representative. You cannot arrest me for doing my job." "Sir, we have already confirmed that you have no connection to any HOA," Officer Kim told him. "We have also been investigating your activities in this neighborhood for over a week. You are facing serious criminal charges." As the officers led Derek toward their car, Sarah's neighbors began coming out of their houses to see what was happening. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Johnson, and several other residents who had been targeted by Derek's scam gathered on the sidewalk. "Is that the fake HOA man?" Mrs. Chen asked. "That is him," Sarah confirmed. "The police caught him breaking into my house." The neighbors looked relieved and grateful. Derek's arrest meant the end of his harassment campaign against their community. Officer Martinez came back to speak with Sarah before leaving. "Ms. Martinez, we will need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a full statement. We will also need copies of any videos or photos you took of Derek's activities." "Of course," Sarah agreed. "I have been documenting everything he did this week." "Your dogs did an excellent job tonight," Officer Martinez added. "They probably prevented Derek from stealing your belongings or causing even more damage to your property." Sarah looked at Max and Luna, who were now sitting calmly beside her. They looked proud of themselves as if they knew they had done something important. "They are good dogs," Sarah said, patting both of them. "They were just protecting their home." As the police cars drove away with Derek in custody, Sarah's neighbors gathered around to congratulate her and praise her dogs. The fake HOA threat that had been hanging over their neighborhood for weeks was finally over. Max and Luna soaked up the attention from the neighbors, wagging their tails and accepting pets and treats. They had gone from being regular family pets to neighborhood heroes in one night. But for Sarah, the most important thing was that her home was safe again. Derek Hoffman's crime spree was over, and justice had finally been served. 3 weeks after Derek Hoffman's arrest, Sarah sat in the courthouse watching as the judge delivered his sentence. Derek stood before the bench in an orange jail uniform, looking very different from the confident fake official who had terrorized her neighborhood. The investigation that followed Derek's arrest had revealed much more than anyone expected. Detective Williams, who took over the case, discovered that Derek had been running similar scams in 3 different cities over the past 2 years. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said during the sentencing hearing, "Mr. Hoffman collected over $12,000 in fake HOA fines from unsuspecting homeowners. He targeted elderly residents and single women, using intimidation and threats to coerce payments." Sarah learned that Derek's operation was more sophisticated than she had realized. He had fake business cards, official-looking forms, and even a fake website that made his HOA compliance service appear legitimate. He had studied real HOA rules and regulations, so he could sound knowledgeable when confronting his victims. The prosecutor continued, "In addition to the fraud charges, Mr. Hoffman escalated to stalking and breaking and entering when Ms. Martinez refused to pay his fake fines. This shows a clear pattern of increasing criminal behavior that poses a danger to the community." Derek's defense attorney tried to argue for a lighter sentence, claiming that Derek was going through financial difficulties and had made poor choices, but the judge was not sympathetic. "Mr. Hoffman, you systematically targeted innocent families in their own homes," Judge Patterson said sternly. "You used fear and deception to steal their money. When one victim stood up to you, you escalated to stalking and breaking into her home. This court takes these crimes very seriously." Derek received 18 months in prison for breaking and entering, criminal impersonation, fraud, and stalking. He was also ordered to pay full restitution to all his victims, including the cost of repairing Sarah's back door and replacing the items he had broken in her kitchen. After the sentencing, Sarah met with Detective Williams in the courthouse hallway. The detective had become a friend during the investigation and had kept Sarah informed about Derek's other victims. "We were able to track down 15 families that Derek had scammed," Detective Williams told her. "Most of them will get their money back through the restitution order. Your case was the key that allowed us to build charges against him for all his crimes." "I am just glad he cannot hurt anyone else," Sarah replied. "I keep thinking about what might have happened if Max and Luna had not been there that night." "Your dogs are heroes," Detective Williams said with a smile. "They handled that situation better than most security systems could have." The story of Max and Luna's heroic defense of their home had spread far beyond the Meadowbrook neighborhood. A local news station had featured the story, and the video of Derek calling 911 on himself while trapped by the dogs had gone viral on social media. Sarah returned home to find her mailbox full of letters from people all over the country who had heard about her story. Many were from other homeowners who had dealt with similar scams. Others were from dog lovers who wanted to praise Max and Luna for their bravery. The Real HOA management company had also taken action. Following Derek's arrest, Mrs. Thompson sent a detailed notice to every homeowner in the area, warning them about fake HOA scams and explaining how to identify legitimate HOA representatives. "If anyone ever claims to be from the HOA and demands immediate payment," the notice read, "call our office immediately to verify their identity. Real HOA violations always go through a formal written process with multiple notices and opportunities to appeal." The notice also included Sarah's story as an example of how homeowners should respond to suspicious activity. Sarah was proud that her experience could help protect other families from similar scams. In the weeks following Derek's arrest, life in the Meadowbrook neighborhood returned to normal. The sense of fear and tension that Derek had created was replaced by a feeling of community and mutual support. Neighbors who had barely spoken before were now looking out for each other. Mrs. Chen had organized a neighborhood watch program, with residents taking turns keeping an eye on the streets during evening hours. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson had installed new security lights that helped illuminate the entire block. The Williams family had started a social media group where neighbors could quickly share information about any suspicious activity. Sarah's house had been completely repaired, with a new back door that was even more secure than the original. She had also upgraded her security system based on recommendations from the police. But the most important security feature was still Max and Luna. The two German shepherds had become celebrities in their neighborhood. Children would stop by to pet them and hear the story of how they caught the bad man. Other dog owners asked Sarah for training advice, wanting to teach their pets how to protect their homes as effectively as Max and Luna had. Sarah was happy to share what she had learned about dog training and home security. She organized informal classes in the local park, teaching other pet owners basic commands and protective techniques. Max and Luna served as demonstration dogs, showing how well-trained animals could provide both companionship and security. "The key is consistency and positive reinforcement," Sarah would tell the other dog owners. "Max and Luna learned to protect our home because they love being there and they want to keep it safe. The training just helped them know how to do it properly." One of Sarah's favorite developments was the friendship she had formed with Officer Martinez. He had become a regular visitor to the neighborhood, stopping by to check on residents and build relationships with the community. He often brought treats for Max and Luna, who had become his favorite police K9 helpers. "Those dogs did my job better than I could have," Officer Martinez told Sarah during one of his visits. "They caught the criminal, protected the property, and kept everyone safe. Not bad for a night's work." The viral video of Derek's capture had also brought some unexpected opportunities for Sarah. A local dog training company had offered her a Part-time job teaching protective training classes. A home security company wanted to feature Max and Luna in their advertising. A publisher had even contacted her about writing a book about home safety and dog training. Sarah was considering these opportunities, but for now, she was happy just to be back to her normal routine. Teaching third grade, working in her garden, and spending quiet evenings at home with Max and Luna was exactly the life she wanted. The only permanent change was that Sarah now felt much more confident about her ability to handle difficult situations. Derek's harassment had been scary at the time, but dealing with it successfully had made her stronger and more self-reliant. "I learned that I do not have to be a victim," Sarah told her friend Jessica during book club one evening. "When someone tries to intimidate or threaten me, I have options. I can gather evidence, call for help, and fight back. And I have the best security team possible right at home." Max and Luna seemed to understand that they were being praised. They wagged their tails and pressed closer to Sarah, always ready to protect their beloved human and their safe, happy home. 6 months later, Sarah received a letter that made her smile. It was from an elderly woman in another state who had seen the news story about Derek's arrest. The woman had been targeted by a similar fake HOA scam, but she remembered Sarah's story and called the police instead of paying the fake fine. The scammer was caught and arrested, largely because Sarah's case had taught people what to watch for. "Your courage and your wonderful dogs probably saved me from being robbed," the woman wrote. "Thank you for standing up to that criminal and showing the rest of us how to protect ourselves." Sarah showed the letter to Max and Luna, who wagged their tails as if they understood the importance of what they had accomplished. They had not just protected their own home that night. They had helped protect families all across the country by ensuring that Derek Hoffman was caught and stopped. As Sarah looked around her peaceful neighborhood and her secure home, she felt grateful for everything that had happened. Derek's attempt to victimize her had backfired completely, bringing her community together and making everyone safer. And every night, as Max and Luna settled down to sleep by her bed, Sarah knew she was protected by the best security system in the world. 2 loyal dogs who loved their home and would do anything to keep it safe. The fake HOA cop had thought he was breaking into an easy target. Instead, he had encountered 2 four-legged heroes who turned his criminal plan into his downfall. Justice had been served, the neighborhood was safe, and Max and Luna had earned their place as the most famous guard dogs in the city. Derek Hoffman's crime spree was over, but the legend of the dogs who stopped him would live on in the neighborhood for years to come.